Billions allocated for flood control are stolen, while millions drown in the Philippines. But this is not just another corruption scandal. You see, our ancestors once thrived and danced with the water, but sadly, today, corruption and greed flows faster than the flood waters. So what exactly happened? How did we end up here? Mabuhay, or in Kapampangan, luwid kayo. Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Kirby Araullo, your friendly Pinoy historian. You've probably heard about this massive flood corruption scandal in the Philippines. I mean, it's all over the news and social media. You know, when hundreds of billions of public funds were stolen, while countless communities are flooded year after year. So in today's video, I want to show you how we went from our ancestors mastering the floods to the Philippines today drowning in massive floods and corruption, and how this scandal actually continues a pattern that started hundreds of years ago. What if I told you that there's a place in the Philippines that gets twice the rainfall of Metro Manila, yet it never floods? In northern Luzon, the indigenous Ifugao people have maintained what is called the Muyong system for over 500 years. And you know, their homeland receives around 2,500 to 4,000 millimeters of rain annually. For perspective, Metro Manila drowns in massive flooding with only half that amount. You're probably thinking, how is this possible? Well, because the Ifugao people work with water instead of fighting it. Each Muyong forest contains dozens of native tree species strategically planted to regulate watershed flow. Ifugao villages are positioned on naturally higher ground, while their agricultural terraces are precision engineered to prevent erosion and manage runoff. The trees absorb the excess rainfall, and the terraces channel it safely, and the communities stay dry. Just think about it. Traditional Muyong areas have long avoided the catastrophic flooding seen elsewhere. An impressive flood management record spanning centuries. So while modern-day Metro Manila spends billions on band-aid solutions marked as infrastructure that, fails every rainy season, the indigenous Ifugao simply dance with the rain. How did our ancestors master something that we can't seem to figure out today? Forget everything you think you know about pre-colonial architecture in the Philippines. It wasn't all about bamboos and nipa huts. Unknown to many, our ancestors developed sophisticated solutions for different flood challenges and environmental challenges across the Philippines. For example, around Lake Lanao, the indigenous Maranao Torogan used massive hardwood posts and rounded stone foundations that allowed entire buildings to sway and to absorb the shocks from storms, floods, and even earthquakes without breaking apart. These were resilient indigenous royal palaces built to last. Now, in riverine and coastal areas like pre-colonial Manila and Tondo, wooden palaces and fortified compounds were positioned strategically where the Pasig River meets Manila Bay. These were elevated above seasonal flood levels while maintaining access to both river transportation and maritime trade. Most Filipinos today think of pre-colonial settlements as just a bunch of scattered nipa huts and bamboo structures. But the thing is, Spanish chroniclers themselves described fortified palaces and native houses neatly lined up in streets. Traditional architecture that had successfully managed flooding from both the river overflowing and the storm surges for generations. In mountain communities like the indigenous Ifugao, they paired their forest systems like the Muyong with elevated homes that could be disassembled and relocated when extreme weather demanded it. In fact, throughout the archipelago, the modular Bahay Kubo design allowed entire structures to be moved to higher ground during flood seasons. These are just some examples of indigenous architecture that solved one fundamental challenge: how to flow with life like water, in harmony with Mother Nature, and not struggle against it. Our ancestors understood something much deeper than just some flood adaptive engineering. In fact, our ancestors understood water through a completely different worldview. For example, in Kapampangan mythology, typhoons were not just random disasters. Pre-colonial Kapampangans believed that bagyo or typhoons came from the bagyus, or the majestic flapping wings of Apung Galura, the celestial judge sent by the supreme god Apung to cleanse society, especially when leaders failed their duty to protect and serve the people. Our ancestors saw typhoons as purposeful divine intervention. They didn't see it as punishment, but as an opportunity for renewal and correction, and for a fresh start. So when storms came, Kapampangan communities didn't just rely on elevated houses and forest management. They understood this as a test of leadership and environmental stewardship. Floods were seen as nature's way of washing away corruption and reminding society to care for both people and the land. This indigenous spiritual framework created accountability, so leaders who ignored environmental wisdom, or worse, exploited communities, would face the wrath of Apung Sinukuan through Apung Galura's judgment through the very floods they failed to prevent. Our ancestors didn't see floods as enemies to defeat, but as cycles of Mother Nature demanding preparation, respect, and moral responsibility. So what exactly happened to all this wisdom? Unknown to many, including many Filipinos today, back in the 1570s, the Luzones warned the Spaniards exactly where not to build. But the Spaniards ignored the warning, and almost immediately, their settlements flooded. The conquistadors arrived in Manila Bay back in 1570, fresh from conquering the Aztecs and the Incas and having just subdued the Visayas. They were riding high on imperial confidence, and now they're eyeing Maynila or Manila, the fortified center of the kingdom of Luzon or Luzon, especially with, Maynila and Tondo's lucrative trade routes to China, Japan, Southeast Asia, India, and beyond. Unknown to most Filipinos today, during negotiations with the paramount kings of Luzon, Raja Matanda, Raja Sulaiman, and Lakandula, the Spaniards presented themselves as peaceful settlers. They promised that they're merely seeking to partake in the thriving trade of Manila Bay, like other foreign merchants before them. But of course, as we know from history, the conquistadors lied, and a fierce battle erupted that burned Maynila to the ground. But nevertheless, after the conquest a year later, in 1571, the native Luzones offered the newcomers crucial advice. They warned the Spaniards against building permanent settlements in the lower Pasig River area. They explained that seasonal flooding makes these areas unsuitable for fixed settlements. The Luzones had spent centuries mastering the seasonal rhythms of the rivers and the seas. So when the monsoons came, they knew exactly which areas would flood and which areas would stay dry. The Spaniards arrogantly dismissed the warnings entirely. They're probably thinking, what could these primitive natives possibly know about engineering? Only one of the most sophisticated pre-colonial indigenous coastal riverine flood management systems. Think about it. While contemporary European cities were drowning in their own sewage and flooding regularly, the Pampanga River Delta and Manila Bay represented an integrated environmental mastery that our modern-day infrastructures are still struggling to match. So here's how it actually worked. The Pampanga River once flowed through many branches. It maintained multiple distributaries flowing into Manila Bay, and those channels and branches shared the flood risk by spreading out the floodwaters through the many branches, instead of funneling it into one deadly stream, like we see today in the dangerous single channels we're stuck with. So coastal Kapampangan communities live directly in flood-prone areas, but with sophisticated adaptive architecture, like elevated houses on stilts, flexible bamboo construction, that bent with the floods rather than breaking. They maintain the vast Candaba Swamp as a natural flood retention with over 220,000 hectares of storage capacity. The coastal genius of the Kapampangans was integrating over 50,000 hectares of mangroves as natural storm surge protection, while at the same time, supporting thriving fisheries with coral reef systems that absorb the ocean's energy, breaking the wave before it even reached the shore. The Luzones communities manage the watershed as one integrated system. Upstream forest conservation to regulate the flow, midstream river channels to distribute the floods, downstream mangroves to protect the coast, and along the coast, key ports positioned for global commerce. And all of this worked with the cycles of water, not against it. Spanish accounts mention sophisticated water management in naturally irrigated swamplands, with settlements that are strung out along the rivers and houses built on stilts. They found communities that had turned flood adaptation into economic advantage, making the region wealthy while keeping the people safe. What is remarkable is that there was no central flood control authority. Instead, the Luzones had oral traditions, communal practice, and distributed stewardship that supported watershed integration, across the vast Pampanga River Delta and Manila Bay. It was a shared indigenous cultural understanding of how to dance with water. The Spaniards thought that they knew better. They had just conquered the Aztecs and the Incas. So in their minds, what could these inferior islanders possibly teach them about urban planning? When the Spaniards returned in 1571, They found Manila in ruins from the devastating fire and battle of May 1570. But rather than learning from the sophisticated indigenous flood management that had made this a thriving center for trade, they imposed rigid European designs on the ruins, like stone buildings in flood-prone zones, grid streets that block natural drainage, heavy construction that couldn't adapt to our native land. And despite the warnings from the Luzones about seasonal flooding, the Spaniards built exactly where they were warned not to build. The results were swift and predictable. Almost immediately after conquest, major flood damage began striking the new Spanish colony. Water surged through exactly where the Luzones had warned the Spaniards not to build. But instead of learning from this disaster, the Spaniards doubled down. They blamed it as acts of God. While ignoring what locals knew, they began forcing other communities to abandon flood-safe settlements in favor of the Spanish-designed towns. This was just the beginning. The same arrogance that ignored Manila's indigenous environmental wisdom would systematically destroy traditional knowledge across the entire archipelago. So how do you destroy centuries of indigenous environmental wisdom? The short answer is, you don't just ignore it. You make it illegal and then call it devil worship. You demonize it. The Spanish followed a clear pattern. First, dismiss indigenous practices as superstition, then ban them as idolatry and devil worship, and then replace them with colonial systems that do not actually work. The Synod of Manila in the early 1580s officially declared indigenous practices as devil worship. By the early 1600s, indigenous flood and weather prediction was formally made illegal. Catholic rituals replaced traditional environmental knowledge that had protected communities for centuries. And even when the Spanish priests themselves admitted that native practices actually worked better than European methods, they still pushed for elimination. Father Pedro Chirino documented in 1604 that indigenous storm prediction was effective, and yet advocated replacing it with Catholic rituals. Native communities were forced to abandon their flood-safe settlements in favor of Spanish-designed towns that are centered around churches, many of which were built exactly where our ancestors had warned against building. So if you think about it, religious ideology and colonial control mattered more to them than the lives. The destruction went deeper than just banning traditional knowledge. Now, how do you turn environmental destruction into profit? Well, the short answer is, if you're greedy, you create systems where disasters enrich the powerful instead of actually protecting the people you serve. The destruction of indigenous knowledge was not just spiritual, it also created the economic foundation for modern-day corruption. Unknown to many, before colonialism, land and natural resources in what is now the Philippines were held communally, collectively shared, managed, and sustained by the entire community, never owned by the individuals. But then, Spanish Encomienda and Hacienda systems established a pattern. Those in power enriched themselves, while communities suffered the consequences. Political positions became opportunities for the extraction of wealth rather than genuine public service. And colonial system like this was not just about taking the wealth or making profit. It also created expensive recurring failures. For example, the Encomienda system demanded massive timber supplies for galleon shipbuilding and colonial constructions, nearly wiping out Pampanga's dense forest that had once regulated watersheds in what are now Central Luzon and Manila Bay for centuries. And in Batangas alone, town after town required costly relocations. San Juan moved 7 kilometers inland in 1890 after constant coastal flooding, while Lipa abandoned its earlier beachside location in 1756 following volcanic and flood disasters. And these are just some examples. And across the archipelago, the pattern was clear: reject indigenous expertise, then spend colonial resources fixing preventable disasters. Communities were forced to abandon sustainable practices for cash crop production, and this created a vicious cycle. Environmental destruction generated more disasters, requiring more colonial intervention, justifying more extraction from our motherland's natural resources, while the Spaniards introduced the system of extraction and exploitation. Unknown to Filipinos, the Americans would later perfect the system with devastating efficiency. So how do you erase knowledge so completely that people forget it ever existed? Unknown to most Filipinos today, within just 48 years of American rule, U.S. imperialism arguably destroyed more of our motherland than the 300 years of Spanish rule. When it came to flooding in the Philippines, the Americans took the failures of the Spaniards and made them even more systematic. For example, American engineers declared that indigenous flood practices were nothing but based on superstition rather than scientific understanding. And so, Western engineering became the only acceptable approach to water management. American urban planning forced these geometric streets and centralized grand plazas that are indeed beautiful, but this disrupted how water really moved. It disrupted the natural water flows that our indigenous layouts had long respected. The Americans didn't just dismiss our indigenous flood knowledge, they also made their exclusion legally permanent. The 1902 Land Registration Act eliminated communal watershed ownership. Indigenous flood governance was replaced with colonial water rights that ignored natural systems. This let developers take over rivers, swamps, and mangroves, destroying the natural systems that our indigenous communities once used to control the floods. Then, when the record-breaking 1919 rainfall hit, it flooded Manila and central Luzon for months. It damaged areas that, for centuries, had previously stayed dry under indigenous settlement patterns. And so by 1946, when the Americans finally recognized Philippine independence, Filipinos had been trained to see their own flood wisdom as nothing but primitive superstition. And this set us up for disaster when modern climate met colonial era drainage. Upon independence, the Philippines faced a crucial decision. Would Filipinos reclaim our ancestors' environmental wisdom? Or are we just gonna continue this colonial path of destruction and exploitation? The choices our leaders made sealed our fate. So after World War II, American engineers designed our post-war reconstruction following Western flood control models. This setup made American approaches our national standard. And even into the 1970s, we stayed locked in this colonial mindset. And sadly, the consequences were devastating. For example, in 1972, 40 days of non-stop rains caused the waters of Manila Bay and the Lingayen Gulf to practically meet in a great flood, a catastrophic flood that submerged the entire Central Luzon basin. Countless communities from Pampanga and Bulacan to Tarlac and Pangasinan were deeply affected. Rice fields were drowned in seawater. There was no harvest. Families survived on military rations. The famine was so devastating that it was immortalized in the traditional song 40 Dias. And once again, an ancient Kapampangan saying came true. Patye merano pla rin Kapampangan, miyadyane ing Manila. If the Kapampangan starved in famine, Manila better beware. Because for centuries, La Pampanga, or what are now the provinces of Central Luzon, had long been the archipelago's breadbasket. And so whenever floods destroyed that lifeline, Manila and the other regions would starve. Then came 2009. Typhoon Ondoy unleashed 455 millimeters of rain on Metro Manila within just 24 hours. It was a month's worth of rain in a single day, and thus completely overwhelming Metro Manila's drainage systems. And sadly, hundreds of people died. Now, these are just some of the most well-known devastating examples. But instead of, learning from these disasters, those in power somehow created something far worse. Just think about it. What is worse than ignoring the wisdom that could save you? Stealing the money. Stealing the millions of money, the billions of money, meant to save lives, while people are literally drowning. So instead of learning from Ondoy and countless other disasters, the rich and the powerful created the ultimate betrayal. Billions poured into flood control projects, with up to 70% lost to corruption according to government officials. In fact, within just 3 years, the Philippines spent 545 billion pesos on flood control projects. And if 70% was lost to corruption, that is almost 380 billion stolen. Public money diverted into private pockets instead of saving lives. Now, according to the Secretary of Finance, from 2023 to 2025 alone, the annual corruption losses from flood control projects ranged from 42 billion to 118 billion pesos each year. Now, recently, these contractors testified that lawmakers themselves demanded 10 to 25% kickbacks as part of their standard procedure. So more than just individual greed, it is also the same system that has been stealing from our people since the colonial times, now operating when climate change makes storms even more deadlier than ever, beyond anything our ancestors faced. But here's the thing, the cruel irony. Officials profit from projects that fail, every year. Meanwhile, the colonial system that destroyed our indigenous flood wisdom also created this ever-worsening climate crisis. So why solve flooding on a one-time project when you can get paid to so-called fix it every single year? In short, the more deadly the storms are, the richer the powerful get. Recent investigations document the mechanisms: ghost projects, systematic kickbacks, political protection. If you think about it, these are the same extraction patterns from Spanish colonialism through American imperialism. A system of corruption that profits from the very disasters it helped create, precisely when our people are most vulnerable. Our ancestors understood something crucial, something we've forgotten about this deadly combination. When leaders betray their duty to protect and serve the people, the consequences will flow like flood, like water flooding through every crack in society, until society is cleansed. Remember Apung Galura and Apung Sinukwan? Our Kapampangan ancestors believed that typhoons came as divine cleansing when society needed correction, when corruption is rampant. Now just look at our situation today. The worst corruption scandal in our flood control history, happening precisely when the ever-worsening climate change continues to intensify the storms. So maybe our ancestors were right when leaders steal billions meant to save lives while communities drown, when greed and exploitation meets climate crisis, when corruption flows faster than the flood waters. Then perhaps the divine wings of Apung Galura are beating stronger, calling for action. But the thing is, the choice is ours. We can keep drowning in the floods that have been magnified and worsened through shameless corruption, ruthless greed, and relentless exploitation. Or we can take action. We can prosecute the thieves, restore integrity to our institutions, and reclaim the wisdom our ancestors offered. Just think about it. We can actually build something better by combining indigenous traditional knowledge with modern engineering while building accountability back into our systems. Because in the end, the waters remember everything. They remember our wisdom. They remember our corruption. They're waiting to see which path we choose. So will we choose to live in harmony with Mother Nature or keep fighting against it? Traditional knowledge keepers still exist all over the Philippines, and that wisdom that protected our communities for centuries still exists and remains available for all of us willing to learn, for all of us willing to take action. Understanding this history helps you recognize which solutions actually work. Understanding our people's history empowers us to demand better, to demand accountability from today's leaders. So let us not forget the wisdom of our ancestors. Let us learn from the struggles of our people. Let us unite and take action against corruption. And if you want to dive deeper, I've actually made hundreds of videos on this channel, and I've also written several books about our people's histories, cultures, and everything in between. So check them out in the links below. Maraming salamat po, or Kapampangan, dakal pong salamat kay Hongan, in Ilocano, agya manaklaunay. See you next time, mga Tagal, kita-kits, and Kapampangan, Mikitix, and in Binisaya, kita-aita.